What's up, everyone? I hope you are doing well today and enjoying day two of the NBA playoffs in the NBA bubble. But that is not what we're here to talk about. Schwan, we missed a week. Last week I was sick, but we're here for episode 175 of the MMA Ratings podcast. Let everybody know how you're doing, sir.
Oh, busy as always. Actually, just got done working out, so made it just in
What?
time to
You
the
know
show.
damn well you weren't working out. What were you doing?
Oh, I was running on the treadmill. I usually go like about an hour and then do like half an hour on the exercise bike.
Look,
Trying
man,
to set
you
trying to
ain't
set a good
you
example for the kids. Basically.
you ain't got to come on the show and start lying, though. You ain't never done that before. Don't start no new habit of coming on here telling some type of story. All right, the fans ain't gonna get behind you for that.
Oh man, missed you. How you doing good?
Say it again.
I said I missed the rapier sharp humor of one Rafael Garcia.
Whatever. I'm good, man. I'm chilling, watching this game. Who you think gonna win the playoffs this year? Who you got
I
winning?
figured it's between Lakers and Clippers. I think they got it. I want to say Lakers, but they gotta get that 3 point shooting thing fixed. You got to hit threes to win nowadays. You got to hit some, and they're just so bad right now. But if they get the 3 point shooting fixed, I'm gonna go with Lakers.
Man, as much as I agree with that, I want to see Portland win this series, but we know it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, no, they can't play enough defense. They can score, but they can't stop. I mean, everybody who played them since they've been in the bubble been putting up career high number. I mean, Karis LeVert dropped almost 40 points on him, and I know he's a good player, but he ain't 40 points good.
No, he ain't. I mean, 40. Yeah, but this has been a crazy season. I've been loving it. But we're not here to talk about basketball, even though we probably could do a whole show about basketball because there's plenty of MMA action for us to discuss. But before we do that, as always, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the show. You can find all of the content from MMA Ratings starting at MMAratings.net. You can check us out there. And you can also subscribe to all of our social media channels, MMA Ratings Net on Instagram and Twitter. And you can also catch us on YouTube at MMA Ratings. We have a Spotify and Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, and a Breaker profiles as well for our podcast, which is this one on Tuesdays and the pro wrestling one I do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, one of the days throughout the week, but I also do that later on in the week. But all of those names are also MMA ratings. Myself, you can catch me at R Garcia underscore sports. Schwan Humes, you can catch me at Black Jordan Breed. So be sure to check us all out to see what type of foolishness we're talking about, ranting and raving every day of the week. So let's go ahead and jump into the Schwan and talk about UFC 252, where Stipe Miocic defeats Daniel Cormier via unanimous decision to keep the heavyweight title around his waist and end the trilogy with 2 wins to one over Cormier. And what I want to talk about with Stipe is the strategy adjustments that he made. And this was probably the biggest talking point for me coming into last weekend's fight because you saw adjustments from both fighters from each fight. And I think that's what is most interesting to me about these fights too, that they got progressively longer each time they fought. They fought 2018, 2019, and now 2020. And we saw key strategy adjustments from Stipe this time around that really played into his victory, such as whenever he was getting into the clinch, he was using his left hand to control Cormier's right hand because he knew that right hand overhand right coming out of the clinch is what blew his face off in the first fight and also hurt him in the second fight as well. He got dropped by it too this fight at the end of the first round, so he was really doing a good job of checking that hand. But Schwan, talk about that adjustment and what other strategy adjustments you saw from Stipe in this 5 round fight.
That was the biggest one. I think DC was used to getting those clinches and getting them easy, and he would use them for rest spots. Because one, Stipe was accepting the position, so then DC could essentially hold him up against the cage or tie him up in center cage and either just rest or he could wear on Stipe or he could just land bombs on him. So it was a position that gave him multiple options in what he wanted to do against Stipe: slow the pace, wear him down, or punish him. And Stipe making that less of a factor took probably, I don't want to say it took like 50%, but probably somewhere at 25, 30% of Daniel's meaningful offense was taken away when he essentially neutralized that position. The uh, the big thing about Stipe is, in my opinion, the biggest secret, the biggest advantage he had is striking. Daniel Cormier has a very functional brand of striking, not very defensively sound, not very offensively structured. The footwork's not all there. The combination punching isn't often there. He headhunts a lot. Really, Stipe had the footwork, the length, and the offensive skill set to really stay at range and kind of take Daniel apart with kicks to the leg, kicks to the body, and a long jab and long right hand and some feints. And with his footwork, he should be able to enter on angles, exit on angles, and circle around Cormier. But Cormier's athleticism and the fact that Cormier won't be scared off by big shots, he'll still come forward, is essentially what threw Steve's initial game plan off. Because he wants to use the range, he wants to use the striking. Because once you get it at range, technically speaking, there's not much Daniel does better than Stipe. But Daniel is so quick that he gets into the pocket with Stipe and he's throwing fast, and Stipe can't react to it. That's why in the second fight you saw your feet are moving so slow, it can't get out of the way. It's not that he couldn't get out of the way. It's just Daniel was getting into positions that he didn't want him to get into, and he's getting into them so fast. And then he'd instantly walk into those clinches and be able to bully Stipe or just outright beat him up in those clinches. Now, what Stipe was doing by reversing and tying up those clinches and getting an advantageous position, even if Daniel started ramping up the volume where he's hitting 5, 6, 7, 8 shots, then Stipe, and he went into that clinch to kind of take over, Stipe could reverse it and then punish Daniel. Or if Daniel tried to rest in it, he could reverse it and then make Daniel carry his weight and kind of wear on Daniel. Because the biggest thing that was working against Daniel was the fact that he wasn't able to fight at pace for the entirety of the fight. If Daniel could have stayed at a certain pace the rest of the fight, he would have won it. Same thing in the second fight. He would have won that fight. But the fact of the matter is he's no longer the king of the grind. He can't set a pace and maintain it, and he sure as hell can't set a pace and build on it. So he needs those rest spots. He needs those spots where he knows he can dominate, and Stipe took that away when he essentially neutralized that clinch.
So there's a couple of different things that I want to talk about there in reference to how both fighters changed a little bit. What did you think about Stipe Miocic's movement throughout the fight on Saturday? Because whenever he stopped moving, and that's something that, looking back, I noticed that he did a lot in the second fight specifically. But whenever he stopped moving, his corner would lose their shit, screaming and telling him to move, and he would go back to circling. What were your thoughts about that? And did that play a major part in how this fight played out?
First of all, I had a discussion with one of our Twitter followers. His name is Dan. Me and him talked about this before the fight. For the purpose of this is a problem that Stipe and Daniel Cormier's camp has. But for the purpose of this question, we're going to address Stipe. His camp is very reactionary. It's like they have to see something work or have to see something not work, and then the next fight they'll make an adjustment. They're not very good at making in-game adjustments, in-fight adjustments, between round adjustments, as we know, because it took Stipe 5 rounds to figure I need to hit Daniel to the body, and his camp didn't even figure that. Stipe just figured, it's there, might as well hit it. That's a key example. With the footwork thing is, in the first fight, Stipe did not maintain the range. He got into that clinch, he got blasted. In the second fight, he wasn't moving his feet. He wasn't on his toes. He wasn't moving his feet. He wasn't circling. He wasn't angling out or angling in. He was just standing in front of Daniel, engaging in a firefight that he was losing because Stipe, for as athletic as he is for a big man, he's slow and he has a hard time with speed. And Daniel Cormier is probably even at this age, still one of the fastest heavyweights out there, probably for a round and a half. So the reason they didn't want him to move his feet is because they know Stipe's defense isn't great, which is also partly their fault. He doesn't focus on a lot. He depends on his length and his own offense to kind of hold guys off, so it protects him defensively. And secondly, and excuse me, his length, and that's a bad thing to do against most heavyweights. That's fine because they reach with shots. They're not very fast. He's got quicker feet. They're not very technical, so they can't athletically beat him to spots, and technically they can't create the openings they need to get to him. Daniel can't create the openings either, but Daniel was so fast that he gets right to where he needs to be on Stipe, and Stipe can't scare him off of power because if they're throwing blow for blow, he may be able to hit Daniel cleaner, but Daniel's hitting him 3 shots for every one Stipe gets to him. Neither one of them is great at defense, but if you got faster hands, you're going to get to the target faster. So they want him to move his feet because if Daniel starts pouring up offense, he's either going to get backed up to the cage, which is small cage, and get overwhelmed, or even if he can stay at center cage, he's just going to be taking shot after shot after shot. And even though Stipe is fairly durable, in multiple fights they've had, 3 fights they've had, he got knocked out once. If I recall correctly, he's been dropped and he's been stunned multiple times. So their biggest thing is move your feet so that Daniel can't go in that straight line and blitz you. He can't just tee off on you because Daniel's footwork isn't good enough. He doesn't step around you. He doesn't step with you. He doesn't cut you off at angles. He basically sets up shop and just throws bombs and throws a blitz of strikes on you. So if you move your feet, Daniel's got to reset. When he resets, you walk him into the right hand, walk him into a check hook, spin around, jab, right hand, spin around, basically keep him out of position and keep him from setting his feet to get maximum power and maximum speed. That's why they don't want him to do that because Stipe can't stand in front of him. It's too risky. Daniel's already proven he can knock him out. He's already proven he can hurt him. You need to take away the speed and take away what cardio he has by forcing him to readjust and to move. If you just let him stand in front of you, Daniel can do that all fight long. It's like that's the fight Daniel wants. There.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was talking on mute.
Yeah.
What was it about this fight that you saw that Stipe Miocic, or not Stipe, Daniel Cormier's corner didn't address from a strategy standpoint and change in this bout? You saw Cormier talking about it a bit during the post-fight interview, where he was saying that in the first round, he caught Stipe overextending himself. That's why he was able to score that single leg takedown, but he didn't score any more takedowns for the rest of the fight. What adjustments did you think you saw that could have been made by Cormier's corner that weren't, that impacted how this fight played out?
The thing I wanted to see from Cormier, and I only saw it in flashes, is I wanted Cormier to come out early and attack the legs and attack the body of Stipe. I know attacking the body is a risk because Stipe could counter him with a hook or hit him with an uppercut or maybe get to knees, even though Stipe's not a real big knee guy. But I wanted to see him attack the gas tank of Miocic. When you just headhunt, yeah, you can hurt a guy, yeah, you can rock him, but and you build up attritional damage that way by racking up the punishment, but you're not really slowing him down past a certain point. And one of the biggest things that Stipe did was he attacked Daniel's body so that whatever cardio he had, whatever volume he could throw, would be minimized. And I would have liked to see Daniel do something similar. Stipe's got those long legs, kick at the inside of the legs, kick the outside of the legs, take some of the spring off the steps, take away some of that mobility. And then on the other side of that, also attack the body. You know, we know Stipe was getting tired, even though he was essentially controlling the fight. Stipe got tired in both fights. In the second fight, he was tired and pushed through. In the last fight, towards the last couple round, last few minutes, Daniel was hitting him in succession. Daniel was putting some pressure on him, and Stipe looked a little ragged. But Daniel never made a full commitment to taking those legs and taking the body away from him. That's what I would like to see. And another thing I would like to see is Daniel use level changes, not for the actual takedowns, but just level changes on the shots. Change level, use the body head combination instead of going for the head all the time. Because when you miss headshots and you're throwing hard, you're wasting a lot of energy. You're wearing yourself down. And then also, when every time he's missing, he's getting countered by Stipe. So he's not just exhausting himself; he's taking punishment. I would have liked him to see go low, go high, go high, go low. That way, you're attacking multiple areas on the body. It makes it harder to defend because he doesn't know if you're going to the body or you're going to the head. Also, it helps you find a rhythm for your headshots because the body's always there. If nothing else, you can always touch the body. And secondly, defensively, it protects you because if you're going up and down, you attack the head, he swings, you go under, body, come over top for the head. It essentially makes you more defensively sound and it makes him have to holster his shots a little bit because he doesn't know if you're going to be there when he returns fire. And if he misses and exposes himself, those ribs are getting roasted or that jaw is going to be exposed. But Daniel Cormier's team seemingly didn't drill that enough because I didn't see a whole lot of it from the word go. I don't mean he didn't do it in the fight. I would have liked to see him do that from the word go. Because once you get the level changes going, are you dropping levels to go for the body shot? Or is now the time when you drop levels, and go for the takedown. There's different things you can do to set the takedowns up. There's different things you can do to set the clinches up. And Daniel seemed to have the most unimaginative ways of getting to the clinch and the most unimaginative ways of getting takedowns. They were high, higher in effort, high in energy, and basically didn't get him much results when he did get to him. So they showed the things that I would have liked to see. They didn't show enough of them, and they didn't show them from the beginning of the fight. He needed something to throw Stipe off. He would have come out kicking the legs, going to the body, faking high, going to the body, faking high, going to the body, faking high, kick to the legs, kick to the legs, kick to the legs, go to the body, kick to the legs, headshot. He would have it would have thrown Stipe off. Stipe expected Daniel to come out fast. He expected the speed. He expected the physicality. He expected Daniel to go to the clinch. He did not expect Daniel to change levels because when Daniel started changing levels on him, he wasn't ready for it. When Daniel started committing to the body, Stipe didn't really have any consistent counters for it. When Daniel, the few times he kicked to the legs, Stipe wasn't punishing him for it because he wasn't expecting it. But the things he did expect Daniel to do, he had an answer for. He had an answer for the volume. He had an answer for the takedowns. He had an answer for the clinch when he tried to rest or when he tried to land offense consistently from there. He had answers for that. When he did the other things, Stipe did not have answers for them. And I would like to see him do them a whole hell of a lot more to kind of save his energy and put himself in a position where he'd have enough where he could make a big push late from third round on instead of just trying to hang on and navigate things from the third round on.
What did your scorecards look like at the end of this fight?
I wouldn't say I thought Daniel. I thought all the rounds were pretty close, except for the third round when he got the knockdown. That was kind of a clear round. Maybe the third and fourth. I thought it was like 3 rounds of two, maybe 4 rounds of one. No, I'll take the bet. Three rounds of two. And most of the rounds could have gone either way. When Daniel got dropped in that third round, I think he had that third round, and I think if he would have won that round, he would have won the fight. That knockdown not just won Miocic the round, it essentially won him that fourth round because Daniel was trying to navigate and clear his head that whole time. He couldn't really put meaningful offense together, and he couldn't impose his will because he was just trying to not get knocked out at that point.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at it the same way. I had it 3 rounds of two at the end of the day as well. The last question in reference to Stipe, what is next for him? Should we clear off the calendar for this John Jones fight and hope and pray that the MMA gods give us this bout, or are we going Francis Ngannou?
I think Ngannou is going to get. First of all, Stipe needs to give thanks to Daniel Cormier. I know he had problems with Daniel putting the fight off and talking about Brock Lesnar and all that stuff, but Daniel Cormier has done more for Stipe's Q rating and more for Stipe's name brand and more to make Stipe a a baby
I'll give you
face, I
that.
guess, in the wrestling sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's helped him a lot. So he's made him a lot of money. He's essentially helped him. Even when he beat him, he helped him because he showed a vulnerability. Stipe had to come back and win the title. This has actually been one of the few heavyweight title fights that have been greatly anticipated. Every single one of their fights was greatly anticipated and had a lot of interest from fans. It had a lot of interest for hardcore. So he did him a favor, regardless of what Stipe says. He did him a favor, and I don't know who else Stipe fights outside of John Jones who will get this kind of interest and generate this kind of money. Ngannou's not going to do it, and I think Jones is the best ticket, but he's going to have to get through Ngannou first. I don't think he's going to get Jones right away. If Jones chooses to move up, I don't think Jones is going to fight him for at least another year. It's going to be Ngannou 3-5 months from now, and then Jones maybe 4 or 5 months after that. And if
All
Jones
right.
gets him, Jones is picking his spot because as good as Stipe is, I saw some slippage. I saw some things to be concerned about. I'm not saying from Jones specifically, but as a fighter. And if I'm Jones, I'm taking this into my assessment, and I'm figuring if I wait another fight, maybe another year, I think Stipe is gonna be ready to be taken. And I think that's what Jones is thinking.
See, and I was thinking based off of what John Jones was tweeting out that day that he does see some advantages that he could take into account. And what is interesting about that is a lot of the initial bookers had have Jones as the favorite so far coming into the fight. So I think that would be an interesting bout to make. What?
He's taken Stipe's taken a lot of in these last 3 fights. Stipe has taken a lot of punishment, a lot of
True.
punishment. You know, and Jones has taken some, but he has been taking heavy punches. He's had a long break, and I think he's been planning this for a while. And he's been systematically going through everything, trying to figure out when's his best time for him to strike. Because he's not a stupid fighter. You can say he's not as technical, he's not as great as you think he is. He's not stupid. Every fight he is, impressive or not, it's very high IQ. And I think he's got a plan. And if Stipe gets through Ngannou, I think he goes for him. And while Stipe probably is a better fighter at this stage, you take that kind of damage, this kind of trilogy takes something out of you. And if Stipe is not the same guy, I think Jones can beat him.
Good thoughts there, sir. Let me ask you about Daniel Cormier. The conversation back and forth is, what is his legacy? What is his legacy? What is his legacy? What is his legacy in mixed martial arts now?
He's the runner-up as far as UFC heavyweight. Even though he's probably the runner-up, he beat the best guy, but he also lost to him twice and lost to him a more, I guess, more or less more dominating fashion each time. At light heavyweight, he was the runner-up. He beat everybody except Jones. He's one of the guys who pushed Jones the hardest, but he's never able to consistently beat the man when he needed to beat the man. One thing I will say, the question I've been asking on our Twitter page is essentially, when are we going to have the discussion about how AKA shortchanged Daniel Cormier by having him move down to light heavyweight instead of staying at heavyweight so they could protect Cain Velasquez? Because we saw what a athletically faded and condition, and as far as his cardio, a faded older Daniel Cormier did against a guy who was essentially in his prime, and Stipe, essentially in his prime. He was a tough fight for him, and he's not the athlete or not the conditioned athlete he used to be. If Daniel never had to drop from heavyweight, I think Daniel Cormier may have been a champion early and may have been considered one of the most dominant champions in the heavyweight division. And they did that to make sure that Cain got his shots and had an opportunity to compete for the title. And it's great for Daniel. He became a champion, but I don't know who I would have picked to beat him at heavyweight at that stage. In his physical prime, when he could go all day and he was 2 to 3 times faster than anybody else in the division, and he could take the best shots from anybody.
Yeah, looking back, I know there's going to be a lot of questions about what could have been if Cain Velasquez wasn't a part of AKA, and I think that's going to be an interesting question. And I wonder how they handle that going forward in the future. It's interesting because also at UFC 245, we saw Miroslav Divalishvili have an excellent outing against John Dobson, and he's fighting at 135 as well. And in his corner is Aljamain Sterling, who should be considered the next title challenger for 135. And I'm watching that fight, and I'm thinking to myself, how do they have that conversation about when it's time for Divalishvili to begin calling out for his shot? Because he looks like someone that would give anybody trouble in that weight class right now, regardless of what their rankings are. But his teammate is basically sitting there as the next guy up for the belt. So I wonder how teams are going to, or how they've had and how they will continue to have these conversations, because I think we're in a different era than we were back in the early days of AKA, like when John Fitch and Josh Koscheck were there, early days of Velasquez and Cormier. I think we're in a different time where people got to start having those conversations much differently, and where you will see teammates fight each other. Because also on his card, Jared Rosenstruck knocked out his teammate in JDS. So I think we're handling that much different now than we were back then.
Well, I just think the nature of it, from what I understand, Cain Velasquez played such a big part for Daniel, and he did so much for him. They developed a bond. I think it's a little bit different than just being teammates and guys who are cool. And when you're guys who really could be considered family, like when you know somebody's family, y'all are super tight, and that person has helped you get your career off the ground and kind of help finance you and push you and help develop you. It's a little bit different. But yeah, at this stage, with the money being involved and the opportunities being so few there are, you have to be prepared to do that if you want to proceed, because either you're going to end up losing opportunities, or they're just going to have to end up cutting you if you're making it that much of an issue. I can't afford to have you on our roster when you're refusing to take fights and holding up division.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that there. Let's move on and see what else happened. Marlon Vera defeats Sean O'Malley via stoppage due to strikes, but the conversation is widely circulating around O'Malley's leg injury. in which he couldn't take a step forward. He falls down. Vera hops into his guard, lands a nasty elbow that basically sets up the finish. What were your thoughts about this sequence when you first saw it?
Well, I was thinking, I didn't know if it came off a leg check or if it came off of their attacking the legs. The one concern that a lot of people had for O'Malley, and one I thought about was that O'Malley, for the most part, hasn't fought anybody who's been dedicated to kicking his legs or even attacked his legs. For the most part, guys he's faced have been very defensive in how they fight him. In fact, they're not like they won't lead. They don't want to throw kicks. They don't want to try to establish a jab. They don't want to pressure him because they're fearful. They're fearful of being countered. They're fearful of being countered because he's got very quick hands. He's a very sharp striker. So they try to stay out of range and catch him coming in, maybe catch him with a counter or catch him with something big instead of really going about the process of chopping him down, backing him up, and breaking him down. Vera was essentially pressuring and putting him on his back foot, and usually O'Malley likes to back up and draw you in, but there's a difference in when you're choosing to back up and a guy is backing you up. And what I saw was Vera backing up, and Vera attacked the leg. And O'Malley, I can't really remember too many times O'Malley's been kicked to the legs or really faced a guy who's an active kicker at all. And it's an area that we haven't seen tested from his opponent, and now he was tested, and in his first test that he had, he essentially failed. Whether it was an injury or not, the injury came off of either a check or a kick, which means it wasn't a freak injury. It was something that was a result of what his opponent was doing. Same thing when Tyrone Woodley messed up Carlos Condit's leg when he leg kicked him. So we can't just say it's an injury. Injuries are part of the game. Injuries that come off the result of a strike or a submission are especially part of the game. We can't say it's a fluke because we haven't seen him get his legs kicked a lot. And the first time he gets his legs kicked a lot, he's physically impaired. So maybe that's a strategy that more people need to look into moving forward.
Let me ask this about Sean O'Malley. This is something that caught my eye as soon as he had the injury, and it was clear that he was hurt. Are we dealing with a fighter who maybe, I don't want to use the term brittle, but his body, we see it across sports all the time where an athlete, a star athlete body begins to fail them. We saw with Derrick Rose in the NBA, for example, or even maybe a Bo Jackson in the NFL, guys who were hurt in such a way that cut into the prime of their career. Because I remember he had that bad back injury that caused him to almost lose. Who was he? I can't remember who he was fighting. Maybe it was Sukman Ta that he was fighting against, but he had that very bad back injury. And then he was out for almost a year before the marijuana test failure that he had. Are we running into that situation with Sean O'Malley? Is that a big situation that we may see coming?
Well, you have to wonder. I mean, because he's a young guy, and you haven't seen him in a lot of fights where he's been forced to take punishment. We don't really know how much punishment he can take because most of his fights have been ended fairly quickly, or they've been fights he's been in firm control of. So he really might be fragile, And the toughest matchups he's had as far as guys being youthful and being able to kind of navigate what he's done or his offensive athletic abilities, he hasn't looked great. He fought Terry Ware. Even though he got injured, he gassed badly, really badly, and he just powered through late. Against Sukman Ta, he got injured. It only because he had hurt Sukman Ta so badly, that guy couldn't capitalize off the injury. And against Vera, he got hurt, and unlike Sukman Ta, Vera pressed the issue. He went for the kill when he saw him hurt. He was willing to risk getting knocked out or finish to get the win, and he did. So in his three biggest matchups, you saw various stages of physical deterioration or physical struggle, either an exhaustion, an actual injury, or in this case now another injury. And you have, like you said, you have to wonder about this now because he's a young guy. It's not a guy who's been doing this for 20 and 15 and 18 years and been in tons of wars and his body's breaking down. This is a guy who's 90% of his fights have been one-way traffic. And he's still getting injured. He's still slowing down. He's still having to take extended periods of time off to recover from things. It might just be he's brittle. It could be his body type. It might just be he's susceptible to certain attacks. I don't know which one it is, but you have to ask that question now because you got guys who are 10-year veterans who haven't had this many serious injuries in their career. And then you have Sean O'Malley, who really, I mean, he's had 3 or 4 fights since the Sukmatov fight. So it's like a year and a half, 2 years, and already he's injured and going to be out of commission again for an extended period of time. That's a concern if you're the UFC putting big money into this guy. It might be a concern for a guy who the opposition only is going to get tougher from here on out. You can't give him any more soft touches. You can't give him any more showcase fights. In the division he's in, and the way he talks, and the money he demands, the attention he demands, he's going to be facing more increasingly durable and more increasingly physically punishing fighters moving forward. So how do you hide him?
What do you do with these guys next? Do you run this fight right back and kind of build it up based around that, or do you allow Vera to kind of go off and maybe pick up some wins, and while we take the time to reassess and reevaluate what we are doing with Sean O'Malley?
Well, first of all, I think there needs to be a reevaluation. I've said this before, and everybody kept calling me a hater. I said he hasn't beaten anybody. Sukmatov is tough, but he's not an established ranked fighter. Eddie Wineland was established in ranks like 5 years ago. Eddie Wineland's not a killer anymore. Terrion Ware isn't some great fighter. The guys he's been beating are tough guys. Some guys have a name, some are experienced, but they're not in their prime, and they're not at their most dangerous right now. He's beating up on guys who are the lower end of the top 15, top 20. And he's doing so impressively. That's great. He's doing what he's supposed to do. But people are giving him world elite credit for basically doing a city level job. And while I see the athleticism, I see the sharpness, I see the fluidity, I see the creativity, O'Malley isn't the puncher or the striker as far as power that everybody thinks he is. We still have questions about his cardio. We still have questions about his physicality, and none of that has been challenged yet. So I think he needs to take an extended time off of the injury, get it 100%, then take some more extended time off to really look at his game, look at the potential fights he has to fight in this division, and start being very meticulous and careful in how he's going to approach these fights. Because now that it's shown that you might be a little brittle or you can't take the damage that you put out, guys are going to be willing to risk getting knocked out to get to you because they don't think you can take it. And if he doesn't have some very specific technical answers for the pressure, for the volume, for the leg kicks, for the checks, he's going to end up in this situation again. And he hasn't shown that he's good with pressure. He hasn't shown that he's good with volume. When he can't put a guy away quickly, his defense isn't great, his offensive output isn't great, and his power isn't great. So there's real life holes that we've been talking about on this show for 2 or 3 years that have finally that maybe haven't quite gotten exposed, but we're there for anybody who's willing to open the book, not just look at the book cover, but open the book and see what it's about. So I think he needs to take some time off, get the injury straight, and take some time off and really think about how he's going to approach the next couple of years of his career, because the questions are out there and people aren't going to be scared of him anymore. Not saying they were, but he was banking on that intimidation that doesn't exist anymore. When you get finished like that, and it almost looks like you just got knocked out with the first clean shot you took to the jaw on the ground, that fear ain't there anymore, man. That fear ain't there anymore. And without that, I don't know how far he goes when he's facing people who aren't going to be afraid to come at him.
Good stuff, man. I can see that breakdown there. What else stood out to you on Saturday? For me, 3 things stood out, and I want you to kind of pick out some things for yourself as well. Daniel Pineda's performance 6 years after when he was cut from the UFC, he looked fantastic. He came out there, he stopped Herbert Burns. Burns was having issues with the weight cut and was clearly gassed at various moments, but Pineda was not playing that, got the crucifix, was willing to go jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu with them in some spurts in an MMA basis, and got a big win there. Vince Pichel's win over Mayhem Miller, I think this was solid. I liked how Pichel, he took that first round. He knew he had lost that first round, and he came out there and turned things around. And not only, again, same thing as Pineda, but he beats Miller in his own game. Even took his back at the end of the fight there. So I think that's fantastic. And then the third thing that stood out to me was the opening fight between Kai Kamaka and Tony Kelly. Those two guys went at it. I wrote about this as well in the By the Numbers piece, which you need to go to check out on the MMAratings.net website. If you look at the way the fight started and the adjustments that Tony Kelly made from a distance management standpoint to get himself out of danger, but also put Kamaka in a dangerous spots, this was an excellent strategic battle, and I think it's the type of fight that fans need to see when a fight card opens because it does make you interested in seeing the rest of the night. But for you, Schwan, what stood out for you from UFC 252?
Um, well, I had to talk about the DeSantis fight. It was really, it wasn't shocking, but once again, it was very sobering to see how much your initial camp or how much that initial fundamental or lack of fundamental development from a camp can hinder you. Junior DeSantos is a guy who essentially fights the same way he fought 6 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever he came into the UFC. Only difference is now that chin isn't impenetrable, and his athleticism is taken 1 to 2 steps, if not 3 steps back. And now all the things he could do that he got away with, he can't get away with, and he gets punished for each and every one of them. And it's just a matter of our guys scared of his reputation enough to let him get away with it. Because when they're not, they punish him and they put him out. And it's all because his initial camp essentially built his style purely based on his athleticism and his durability. They didn't develop defense. They didn't develop proper footwork. They didn't develop setups. They didn't develop good, clean striking. They just said, here's a functional skill set. You're big, you're tough, you're fast, you hit hard. That'll be enough. And it was enough as long as he was at his peak. As soon as he fell off his peak, he started getting blown up. And the second thing it brought up to me is that having good management matters because when he lost to Cain Velasquez of that second fight, there was no way in hell they should have made a third fight with him. Cain Velasquez took probably 40% of the world class ability that Junior DeSantis had and beat that out of him. And in the third fight, he beat another 25% out of him. And he was never the same after those fights, and he was never really a truly elite level world class heavyweight after those fights either. He just looked different. And it's for young fighters, make sure you are getting a good foundation. Make sure your coaches are earning their money and not riding off your natural talents, because if they're riding on your natural talents, those will get burned out quickly when you get to the top level, and then you'll have nothing else to fall back on. You'll go from somebody who loses close fights to world class opposition to a guy who's getting knocked out and beat up by anybody who's even touching the top 15 or top 25. That's how bad it'll get. So it was just a story that is something, an example of what young fighters need to not do, what young fighters need to pay attention to in their own development. Take control of your own development, because if you don't, you end up like Junior DeSantos, who has gotten a little bit better, but he's so far gone that he has no room for error. And when you have no room for error, you can't possibly win a fight. His opponent, he won, but I don't know if they're training him right. I don't know if he's just stubborn or he doesn't listen. But that fight could have been over in round one, and it wasn't, because he just couldn't figure out that Junior DeSantis was doing the same thing he's been doing for the past 10 years. And as soon as he figured that out, the fight was over. And I have no idea what he even figured that out in the first round and a half. But it's another discussion. And then the last thing I want to talk about is Felice Herrick and Verna Jandaroba. That was impressive. Her jiu-jitsu, her top control, her ability to get in position and finish so impressively was, I mean, that was elite level grappling, and she's surely a dark horse in the division. I was expecting a little bit more from Felice Herrick. She's a veteran. She has a decent enough skill set, but it seemed like she had never seen her opponent fight and decided to give her opponent the easiest path to victory in the history of mixed martial arts. I didn't see her even approach it like whatever she had planned. It wasn't a good one, and I felt bad for her to come back after that long a time off, and to basically be able to offer nothing in a fairly big card with a lot of people watching it. Had to be pretty humbling and pretty frustrating for her. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me as far as the event.
Good. So we can then move on and talk about some upcoming action. We're not going to talk about this card too much because there isn't really anything that stands out to me about this UFC on ESPN 15. We have the main event where Frankie Edgar is fighting Pedro Munoz, and as I was working on the agenda for tonight's show, I was thinking about this fight itself a little bit because, in my opinion, Munoz has a lot to lose here, but very little to gain. He's sitting in the number 5 position. He's fighting a former lightweight champion, a former featherweight title contender, a future Hall of Famer. We know who Frankie Edgar is, but we also know that he's 36 years of age. He was lost 4 of his last 5, I believe, or 3 of his last 4, one of those two. And I feel like he's being inserted into the bantamweight title picture at a time in his career where his his value is for the up and coming fighters to make their name off of, as opposed to him jumping somebody and getting into the title picture. He's not going to get the Jose Aldo treatment. He can't afford to come in here, lose a fight, and then end up in the title fight the next fight out. That's not going to happen for him. But I think that if, let's say, the next 2 guys, the next 2 bantamweights to fight him and beat him, let's say that happens, that's more value for them than it is for him. I think he's much further off from the title picture than the other way around. What are your thoughts about that, Schwan?
Yeah, Edgar's won in his last 4. Well, he's 1-4 in his last 4. I mean, excuse me, 1-3 in his last 4, and he's had in between the losses, he's had two knockout losses. Um, I guess they're essentially using him as a showcase fight as a name. I mean, they're giving him a chance to rejuvenate his career. He probably could have been a bantamweight for a long time ago, and they didn't have the weight division, and so he put his body through a necessary strain and punishment, fighting much bigger guys at 55 and fighting slightly bigger guys at a featherweight. Now he's going down to bantamweight. They're just, I mean, I want to say it's risky for Pedro, but to be quite honest, it's a name fight. It's going to get him attention and help him increase his brand and give him some kind of malarkey claim in a title shot. It won't be legitimate, but at least he'll have a name on his ledger and a fairly popular one. And it's really a low risk fight. If Frankie somehow beats him, yeah, it's devastating. But if anybody beats him this time, it's devastating. But if he loses now, it's to a Hall of Fame, multiple title challenger, lightweight champion. There's a lot of things you can do to spin it to make it seem less than what it actually is. If he wins it, it's a huge boost as far as his Q rating, and it gives him, if he does it in an impressive enough fashion, it gives him kind of a springboard that might take him a fight or two outside of the title fight. Um, I just think it's really bad for Frankie when he moved to featherweight. He had issues with the speed. He wasn't much faster than the guys there, and now he's older and he's getting outspeeded by featherweights, and he's dropping down another weight class where guys who are in their prime, athletic. So I can only see the speed advantage becoming more of a problem. And even though his defense has improved, he's not very durable anymore. He's still not a big puncher. He's not a physical presence in any weight class he's been in. He hasn't really bullied anybody in the last couple of years, and I can't see it happening now. Um, it just seems like it's a fight to give Pedro a step up and a chance to increase his Q rating and get the fans behind him. Once again, it's a chance for Frankie, but it's really not the kind of fight you'd like to see him at in any weight class. It's kind of a bad matchup given what he's shown in the past 3 or 4 years of fighting.
How do you think this fight plays out? Who do you think wins?
It's almost impossible for me to pick Frankie. I don't know that he's durable enough anymore. Pedro's a big, strong guy, and he's a good finisher on the ground. It seems like this fight is just made for Frankie to lose. I have a hard time imagining. There's ways he can win it, but I have a hard time imagining him executing these ways at this point in his career.
I can agree with that. I used to train with those guys up in Jersey, as I've said before in the past. I think he is someone who definitely has done way too much in this sport. I mean, he's excelled well beyond what people thought he should have done. I remember when they were trying, they didn't have the bantamweight division, and they were trying to push him to drop down to 135 so they could build the bantamweight division around him, and he refused to do so because he wanted to prove that he could hang at 155, and he did that for an exceptional period of time. But I wonder how much more he can take, man. The Brian Ortega knockout was stunning. The Korean Zombie one was even more stunning than that, and he just couldn't keep pace with Max Holloway as well. So I wonder just how much longer he's going to keep doing this. I think he has 2 gyms set up now in Jersey. I know he does a lot of coaching and stuff like that as well too. So I wonder what's next for him and how that plays out. But I don't think he can be doing this too much longer.
Well, he's got a big enough name where he can continue, and against some lesser guys, his experience will carry him through. It's just that, like I said, a lot of his advantage has been cardio and speed. At featherweight, he wasn't outspeeding people. You saw him getting hit more and saw him getting tired because guys could keep up with him. At bantamweight, that's not going to get that much better. And with his name and the money he has and the goals he has, they can't build him up slow. They can't risk him getting knocked out by a young guy. They're going to put him in with the guy who's in the title talks, whether a contender or fringe contender, and a guy who's dangerous. That's the only way he's going to get these opportunities. And I just don't know that physically he's at a spot where he can beat these kind of guys. Even if he beats Pedro, who's he going to be next? I mean, he can't fight Sterling. They're somehow connected. I mean, do I think he can't? I mean, 2 of the guys in the division actually connected to his camp. He can't fight Moraes.
Actually, Moraes doesn't train there anymore. I don't think he trains with those guys anymore. I don't think that they would still fight because actually Moraes is fighting. He was supposed to fight Cody Garbrandt next, but Cody Garbrandt moved down to fight at 125. But they've made some adjustments there. And I don't think that they're on. They're not a part of the same team any longer, I should say. But I still don't think that they will take that fight.
Yeah, I don't think they would, and it's a bad matchup for him. I mean, there's just a lot of bad matches where he can. But like I said, there's Sterling. He can't fight him. And imagine if he beats Pedro and they give him a title fight, and Sterling's supposed to. I mean, that causes all sorts of problems in a camp. Like I said, I just don't think it's a good move, and I don't think there's a lot of good matches for him in this division. Whether he wins or not Saturday, I just don't think there are.
Is there anything else that stands out for you on this card?
I'm interested to see how much longer Ovince St. Preux can stay in the UFC. It seems like they're trying to get him out of there. He's been getting some really tough matchups, given the technical flaws he has in his game. So he's been here for a really long time. He's been probably a contender for the title for the majority of his time here. It's interesting to see how long he can maintain his spot, or does he end up getting run out of the UFC in the next year or 2?
Anything else stand out for you on Saturday's card?
Seeing the strawweight fight, but I don't really think it's a good matchup. In a way, she's a really good fighter, really good athletic talent, really skilled fighter, and it seems like they gave her a showcase fight to kind of whet the appetites of the fans and show that she's a cut above the rest of the girls in the strawweight division. It's interesting for that point, but I don't know that it's an interesting matchup in and of itself. It seems like it's a showcase matchup, and I'm never super hyped about showcase matchups because they're there just to essentially make one person look good.
True, I feel you there. I wanted to ask you a question, man. I'm hearing a lot, and I need your help on this because I don't follow boxing as closely as I do everything else. But I'm hearing a lot about a lot of big name boxing events being scheduled. What are you looking forward to, and what should I be watching where?
The biggest thing I'm looking forward to is the Teofimo Lopez fight with Lomachenko.
You got a lot of background noise, man.
Yeah, the Lopez fight and Lomachenko fight. Lomachenko's considered right now to be the pound for pound best guy, or number 2 in the division, and number 2 in pound for pound. And this is going to be his biggest matchup. He's fighting above his natural weight. He's fighting a guy who's younger, bigger, stronger, and is a knockout boxer, knockout puncher. But in this case, on the opposite end, this guy who's a young and up-and-coming guy is facing the most experienced, one of the most decorated amateur fighters in history, one of the best technical fighters in history, and one of the guys he won a world title fight in his 2nd or 3rd fight ever. So he's facing essentially one of the best boxers of all time. And it's going to be a matter of, is it the technical genius of Lomachenko, or has moving up in weight, fighting in a bigger weight class than he's naturally been at, does that catch up to him when he faces an athletic dynamo who's young, durable, and has power? But that's probably the biggest matchup that's going to be happening in the next couple months as far as quality of fight and the potential it has to up in the boxing community.
Where can I watch this?
It should be on ESPN. I thought they were going to do pay-per-view, but I think they're just going to do it on the ESPN.
True. All right, sir. Next question I have for you. This is more along our realm, much easier to ask. We saw that the next fight that was announced for Brian Ortega and Korean Zombie is scheduled. We also had another big fight announcement in Dominic Reyes, versus Jan Blachowicz. Let's talk about Ortega versus Korean Zombie first. My main question here, I want to ask you, how do you see this fight going from an early preliminary thought? But my main question here is, when did Brian Ortega become the bad guy? Was it when he slapped that K-pop star, or I can't remember if it was a K-pop star or just another guy that was hanging out with the Korean Zombie, or was it when he and I think Cain Velasquez were yelling sexual, I guess, homophobic slurs at Yair Rodriguez and Steven, what's the guy, Jeremy Stevens? When did Brian Ortega become such an asshole?
I'm not sure if he is one or if he's just not reading the room correctly and kind of making the wrong decision. It's really hard for me to tell because I'm not there during these circumstances, and I don't even know if it's an asshole so much. It just looks like he's a guy who might be a bully, and nobody really likes bullies. Not professional fighters, not casual, not fans, not anybody. And it's really weird how quickly it's turned on him. I remember at one point people were really excited about him. They thought he was a really good guy. He had commercials, and it seemed like he was a fan favorite and was going to be able to ride off that for a while. But ever since the Holloway fight and his impending, he's pretty much been inactive. And the only thing he's managed to do is upset people and turn people against him. It's like doesn't have a fight, and so he decided to pick fights with people, and that's just not something you can ever really win when you're attacking the masses or you're attacking celebrities, not in the position that he's in. It's amazing. How quickly MMA and pretty much sports as a whole has turned on Brian Ortega. It's incredible how quickly that happened. And it's incredible that he keeps on building on it. It's like he doesn't know how to stop. Like he just can't help himself.
Is it like a situation where it's a young dude being a jerk and he just hasn't matured enough to realize that he's being a jerk and people are looking at him like, stop being a jerk?
Man, I guess it could be that, but I mean, when you're a name guy in the UFC and you're getting that kind of attention, you can't afford to make this kind of mistake. Somebody on his team or somebody connected to him should have gotten him in order. I mean, that's all I can say. You're not allowed to make those kind of mistakes when you're in the position he's in. It's just dumb stuff. It's just dumb, stupid mistakes. That's all I can say.
True. Schwan, let's take this time, man. Let everybody know what you're working on.
Recently, I just finished and released my article on Melinda May, the fighting strategies and styles of Melinda May from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Released that right after the final, which was Wednesday. And I want to thank everybody for all the support it's gotten. It's got like 100 retweets and like 814 likes. So it's gotten a very, very good response on social media. I even had the actress. She actually tweeted back and spoke up for her choreography team and her stunt team.
Did she really?
Yeah, she actually Ming Na Wen. She actually retweeted the article, shared it, and liked it, and replied to it.
Didn't.
No, she asked Michael. He said it to me. I was like, it'd be really cool if she did.
What's her name? Ming what?
Ming Na Wen.
Found it. Okay, hold on. Let me see. I ain't believe in you. Hold on. Let me see. If you got here. See, I told y'all, folks, Schwan be coming on the show telling all types of foolishness. And just be getting away with it.
You just gotta talk to Michael. He showed it to me.
I didn't. Yep.
Yeah, I was like, it'd be cool if she, just cool because I admire the actress. I like the character she plays. She did a great job on it, and she did it. And it just people just keep. I mean, even now, people are still retweeting and liking it. I check MMA ratings. It's got like a 50 rating, all 10. So I mean, 50 people rated. It's just a lot of people, I guess, like the character, and they appreciated the breakdown I gave. That kind of tells the story of the character and tells like I said, I always look at these characters and look at these fight scenes as if they're real life and death situations, real fights, and I break them down from that position. And I guess a lot of fans just appreciated it. So I want to thank everybody who shared it, everybody who liked it, everybody who read it, everybody who rated it. Thank you very much. It was a very pleasant surprise. I thought it would do well. I didn't think it would do this well. So
Look at this, you motherfucker.
yeah, Michael actually direct messaged me. He's like, dude, do you see what kind of numbers you're doing? I'm like, what? So
What's next?
I'm gonna be supposed to be doing the Black Widow. That's what I'm looking at. If I'm working on the piece for her. So that'll be the second female character I've actually broken down. Melinda May was the first, and Natasha Romanoff will be the second, and hopefully I'll get a good response for that as well.
When are you gonna start doing the matchups though, man? That's what I gave you that idea. You haven't moved on it. When are you gonna start doing the matchups? If so and so, when are you gonna write about how it would go down if Black Widow and Melinda May stepped into the octagon together? Give the people what they want.
I'm probably gonna do it after this part. I want to do that, and then I want to also kind of go back and review some other fights. But I'm definitely gonna get into that. I just, like I said, when you have these pieces, people love these characters and they love the actresses' representation of the characters. So you have to be very meticulous in how you present it because people take. I mean, like I said, Melinda May is not a real person. Steve Rogers is not a real person. But the people who like these characters and like the actors who played them take it very seriously. And if you misrepresent a technique or misrepresent how a fight would go or misrepresent that person's effectiveness as a fighter, you got problems, and I don't need them. So I want to make sure I get this done and give the proper respect to the actress, the person who created the character, and the character itself, so that the people who are fans of it feel that I did justice to that person. And that's what I like the most about this last one. I heard about people saying very nice things about the Captain America piece, but to actually see people comment and say thank you for giving me this plot, it gave me a better appreciation for what they did on the show. It gave me a better appreciation for the reality of the scenes and the techniques. It gave me a better appreciation for how much hard work this is because you break down fights and fighters on a regular basis, real fighters, and you've worked with them. And for you to give it this kind of attention to detail makes me feel better about my support of the show, my support of the fight scenes, and my support of the character. And that really touched me. That made me feel really good. That people felt that I did the show and the character justice.
Good stuff, man. Well, congratulations on that. Much respect for that. Getting that out there and getting that as much coverage as you thought. As usual, I'm covering more wrestling content, some MMA content mixed in here and there, but it is what it is. And wow. Okay. So I just saw that Dominic Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz has just been announced on Saturday, September 26th at UFC 253. This is now for the 205-pound title, not even the interim title, the actual title. So that's huge.
That's big.
That's pretty huge. There's some breaking news on MMA Ratings podcast. So we're gonna close out on that note. As always, man, thanks again for joining us. We will be back next week. I will be here this weekend because there's a lot of fucking pro wrestling to talk about this week. A lot. So I will be here to talk about that. But with that in mind, I'm going to close out. Thank you again, Schwan, for having a great episode. Congrats again on the success of that piece. And we'll be back here next week.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show. You take it easy, and I'll see you next week, man.